Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and hold on to your seats for this take. Are you ready? Because Fallout 76's newest update for Skyline Valley is legitimately great. It has been years since I have sat down to talk about a Fallout 76 update where top to bottom, I'm pretty much only going to be positive in this video. Now, if you watched a lot of my intermittent 76 coverage, you know the type of player I am for this game. As in, when there's a big update, I hop in, I play it through, and then I hop out. There are much more seasoned, experienced 76 players who have a more educated take than me, but for me as a Fallout fan, when there's new content, I'm ready and willing to go, but otherwise I'm not there engaging in the new events, the seasonal stuff. That's not really what I'm there for with 76. So something like Skyline Valley, when it was announced, was really exciting for me because it's okay, a new map expansion. On top of that, we have a new quest line. This new map expansion introduces new factions, new enemy types. Like, this is what we wanted out of 76. More PvE-driven content that led to more exploration, more of the things that you love from Bethesda Game Studios. And so I was very excited going in, even though I just came off of America's Playground, which was a lot of how I felt with previous 76 updates. Almost there, but not quite all the way. The exploration could have been great, but it was just repurposed expedition zones, and that didn't feel as fulfilling as what I got here with Skyline Valley. Now, I'm still in the process of playing it all through, but I really wanted to deliver some impressions here and now on how great I think Skyline Valley is and why. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into what's going on with Fallout, of course you already know, consider subscribing. So let's start off at the top. What is going on in Skyline Valley is one of the biggest parts that drew me in. On an environmental level, I think that 76 has always cooked, even back to its original launch where it was broken. It was still a game that artistically beckoned me to explore its world, and it's never been more strong than here in Skyline Valley. At the heart of this region is a red storm that rages on, and truly, as you go from the outskirts of this new region and gradually crawl your way in, watching the environment transform around you, the way enemies behave around you, just all of that comes together into something that feels very unique for Fallout. In fact, it reminds me a lot of how I felt with like rad storms when they happened in Fallout 4. It felt new. It changed how the environment looked, the lighting, the behavior of the characters. Your rad started to climb up, that sort of thing, right? And seeing that here in 76 in a new, refreshing way, playing to one of its greatest strengths in its art style, it was just amazing. Like, I absolutely was pulled back in, wanting to explore this world, but more than anything, beckoned by this mystery. So when you fire things up, you're going to get a new quest. You have to listen to a radio signal and track down the source of this radio signal, and it's going to bring you to this very kind explorer, Alyssa, and she's just super helpful here. But more importantly, holy crap, there's a vault door in the middle of nowhere, just crashed into the ground. How did this get here, and why? So you go on a little bit of a chase. All right, let's find out what's going on here. You make it to Vault 63, which has already been in the base game before, and inside there are these new enemies called the Lost. And by the way, the audio for them, I'm just a real sucker for distorted audio with any characters in any game, any sort of enemies. It's just something about it that sounds cool to me. And so they use a distorted audio style for how these characters behave, but immediately it's different. It's not quite the Scorched. It's not quite the Ghouls. It's something in between, and you don't know why they're behaving this way and why it's only from Vault 63. And why is the weather so different in this new region that's just at the south end of the map? There's a lot of question marks, and I think for Fallout fans, you're going to find that the investigation, the chase for those answers, is one of the best parts about this new update, especially the fact that it's coming in free. This is what I personally have been looking for with 76. I thought what they were doing with America's Playground was in line with that sort of desire. It's just that the way they executed it wasn't quite there. This has brand new locations, side quests, main quests, and all of it I have found pretty fulfilling thus far. So I don't want to talk too much more about the main story because frankly, as someone who saw the first trailers for Skyline Valley, I kind of went on a little bit of media blackout going in because I didn't want to have anything really ruined for myself. But I'll just say that I found the chase very compelling to get new information on why this is happening in the region, who is the Lost, why is the weather this way in Skyline Valley. I found it just very fulfilling. So I will just say that on a PvE and exploration level, the main things I care about in Fallout 76, or just really Fallout and Bethesda Game Studios games in general, I found this to be really good stuff. One thing I did notice was Some of the combat balancing feels a little off comparatively speaking to what I experienced. Some of these new enemy types are hilarious. Like they have a Thrasher now, it's a radioactive turkey, man. Like, come on, it just can't get better than this. Like, they just keep coming up with new ideas, and I absolutely love this one, but man, do they have a lot of health. Man, did they drain my resources. Man, does my Western Spirit rifle from the Nuka World on Tour DLC, that breaks every single time I use it for more than 30 minutes, but it's like my favorite weapon to use, so I have to keep going back and repairing it. But my damage output isn't as great as it felt like it once was, and nothing has changed to my knowledge with the scaling in 76, so just something to be on the lookout for that you may want to prep a little bit more, because some of the zones in here are tough. Like, I was exploring at one point, oh, they're all level 37, like my character's current level is. Okay, cool. And then I found an area with like level 60 rad toads, so just be warned that this area seems a little bit tougher in the terms of like sponginess of enemies compared to what you've previously experienced. Like many new pieces of content in 76 that involve exploration, it does, if you will, stumble a little bit in that if you go too much off the beaten track, you're going to run into areas that you're going to not know what to do within, and that's because they're tied to main quests. It's not as egregious as something like America's Playground, where I described how that exploration led me down so many different roads, but all of them were people that I couldn't really interact with or do much with, or areas to explore that just weren't as fulfilling because there was a quest tied to them. That is kind of the 76 experience in a nutshell. It's more so with its update content than the base game content where you really can wander. But obviously, given that 76 is just now reaching its full potential and its height of popularity, we haven't seen the full delivery of an all-in level investment from the TV show popularity, which I anticipate will likely hit sometime in 2025, where it's like, okay, we got a lot of players and a lot of money. Let's go big with this one and see what happens. But right now, what I'm trying to say is that as you're exploring Skyline Valley, you will have those moments where you'll wander into a place and go, hey, this is cool. What's going on here? Only to find out, oh, there's a hand scanner here. Oh, because this is tied to the main story. Right, I'm going to go find something else to do instead then. Eventually, it just encourages you, let me just go on the main story path, knock all of this out, and whatever else remains surrounding it, you can go ahead and just do that afterwards. Ultimately, it's left me in a spot where I'm very interested in how 76's future is handled. There's no denying that while it's gradually regained its footing, they're still in a bit of an experimental phase with how they handle updates. And I feel like this is a formula for success. As someone who's come through since the first expeditions with the pit, has seen the storylines be added into the base game map with things like Steel Dawn, Wastelanders, of course, who's also seen them go with expeditions into America's Playground where they've made those spaces explorable. I've seen the highs and lows, if you will, of 76's experimentation. To me personally, I think this is their best swing yet. It's definitely their best swing since Wastelanders, which many of you know I'm incredibly positive on. And I feel the same way here. The base game map of 76 is fantastic. And I feel like this update leans a lot into the strengths of the base game that already existed. I do think there is room for improvement in a thing like America's Playground, where we can go to different parts of America through Fallout 76, which I think is just an exciting formula into itself. But now we know how good exploration works here because they've really figured it out with what you have in Skyline Valley. Based on what I talked about with Todd in our interview last week, it seems like what they're leaning more into is that the expeditions are going to slowly wind down and that the map expansions are more fulfilling. And now, having taken that time to play it through for a few days, I can definitely agree with the sentiment that this was more of an enjoyable experience for me as someone who's been very critical of 76. I know we just did our 2024 review where I ran down from top to bottom everything and said, as someone who's been consistently playing for a while, I'm not as positive as others are on the game simply because I've gone through those highs and lows. Many people dropped 76 or didn't even touch 76 until this year, and so they're getting the best possible experience with the game. Where for me, as someone who's been through those highs and lows, I'm very big on what Skyline Valley brings to the table, and I would love to see more of that. And it does look like the future is bright. You look ahead at things like a playable ghoul race and who else they could add in as playable races beyond that. If they do consider doing that, we don't know how that's going to mess with balancing and the meta, and of course how questing functions, and how do NPCs react to whatever race you are. Like, there's a high ceiling for that in the terms of how they can explore it. We'll see if they go in that direction, but when it comes to content for the game, adding stuff in, Skyline Valley is great, and I hope they do more of this, expanding this base game map in new meaningful ways and just continuing to push what this game can do. So I'm very excited about what's here, and I do encourage that you check it out. Is it worth the full re-download? I think in a quiet season, as I talked about in my 2024 review, it might be worth a little bit of a look for you. It's not a game that I think is going to blow your mind, but I do think for those of you who have been on the outs and not touched any of the updates, it may surprise you truly, because it did get a pretty negative set of coverage throughout most of its life, and it really wasn't until 6 years later with the TV show, wow, it's been 6 years, that's unbelievable, that things have started to turn around. And this having to be its first big update following the show is a really good look, and it's encouraging moving forward. So I do recommend, if you got a little extra time, you're not wrapped up in any single player games, you're not wrapped up in any Game Pass games or indie games or anything like that, any other live service titles, maybe give this one a look and see how you feel about it. Because I think Skyline Valley, for my audience in particular, which I can tell by the feedback, I think I know your taste well, you'll enjoy Skyline Valley more than I think most of 76's prior updates. And so kudos to the team for hanging with it. More of this, please. I would love to sit down for every single 76 update, kind of like this, where I know what I'm getting and it's just as wonderful. So then it can come down to just talking about story and lore, which is what I really want to do. But since this is, in my opinion, I say this with all due respect, a rare time where I'm like, hey, the story and the mystery surrounding like what's happening here in Skyline Valley, like, I want to protect that. Like, normally I want to dive into that stuff. So I'm going to hold back on it for this one. And if it becomes a more regular thing, then we can dive deeper into the characters and the decision-making and the storytelling that 76 is bringing to the table. But let's hope they're bringing more like this forward. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on Skyline Valley. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down below if you've tried out the new update or you plan on trying it out. Fire away. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.